Mama's doing good,
I'm glad to hear
hanging right in there. They just keep coming. You and I both got some older kin.
Mama needs a new pair of shoes, right? Okay. Can you tell if we're recording? Looks
You
like
know
we're
what?
recording.
I
Casey,
see the red button on, Kevin. That's a good sign, buddy.
let me turn this over to you, sir.
Are you giving me the wheel?
I'm going to give you the host. You're in charge. And now you should be in charge, right? I can stop sharing, I guess.
I think there we go. All right. Well, Kevin, I would think by now you would know better than to leave me in charge of things, but so it shall be. Looks like we got a nice quorum here, and we're ready to get started. And guys, thanks for joining us. Those of you who are here for the first time, thank you. I'm just delighted to have everybody here. And actually, this is my PowerPoint wound up doing this to me again. It wound up starting at the very beginning, so I apologize for that. It does that, Kevin, every time I wind up adjusting. But I want to thank everybody for being here while I make this adjustment, but thanks for being here. If you weren't here in the previous session, it's okay. I'll do a little bit of catch-up work, but we've been doing a multi session series all about teaching and learning online. And the reason this has been obviously near and dear to my heart is I've been working for over 20 years in distance learning, and I've had a chance to work with those that facilitate learning at a distance and students for, like I said, for 20 years. I've seen it evolve quite a bit in that time frame, and so in that time frame, a lot has changed, and we've learned a lot about this modality. And what's cool about it, what we're really learning is that there are opportunities today to not just do what's convenient in teaching online, but to also really take learning to a whole different level. I mean, what we're learning today is that it isn't just a convenient alternative. Frankly think that's the way it started, as a convenient alternative, frankly, in some cases to correspondence schools. But now we obviously know that there are so many really unique and distinct opportunities. So what I need to do first is I'm going to hold on a second, and oh my goodness, it did it to me again. So I am going to be starting from the right spot. Sorry, it keeps kicking me back. I had you started correctly.
By the way, while Casey's going to that slide point that he wants in his presentation, at the end of this, for all those of you who attended, or even later, if you sometimes can't attend, because I know we switched times on y'all, and y'all are normally in the beginning, and y'all have been consistently showing up. So again, thank you. But we'll always provide a professional development certificate of attendance, so you can get 1 hour of PD credit, so to speak, if seat time is what it counts towards recertification or anything else that you want, just to verify that you were here. Did you find your spot, Casey?
I sure did, Kevin. Thanks a lot. And then, yeah,
so anyway, I just want to remind folks of that.
Cool. So anyway, this is the book anyway, again, and we wrote this book in 2018. Anyway, from that long history of teaching and learning online, we wrote this book called Creating the Anywhere Anytime Classroom, a blueprint for learning online. Came out in 2018, and largely the audience was, online institutions that were teaching, and we wanted to help expand, this growing acumen, or this growing venue for teaching and learning online. And we had no idea, obviously, in 2020 how it would take off. And so we actually have a consulting company. I'm doing quite a bit of work on that, live sessions, and doing we have a virtual learning tool as well. If you want to learn any more about that or want to have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to ask me. But what you're learning here really falls a lot into the training that we do. And just to cover some basic fundamentals, I'll be covering again, revisiting the key elements of what you need to know, which is about synchronous, cybersynchronous, and asynchronous learning. But ultimately today, the goal is, how do we create engaging lessons? In the first couple sessions that we've had together, we've made the case for distance learning. We've talked about how learning at a distance can ultimately maximize learning opportunities, and how to collaborate together to make that work to its very best. And today we're really going to get right into the pedagogy of how do we, in creating our distance learning environments, how do we make them more engaging and more active? And so some of this stuff is really basic. And I think what you'll hear and observe is that there's a lot of stuff in here. This is just basic good pedagogy about what we do with good teaching and learning. It just happens to be at a distance. I've said this every time we've gotten together, and I say it every time I have a chance to speak to groups like this. But ultimately, I believe that in fact, I just told someone this today in a one-on-one. I believe the term distance learning or digitized learning it's going to go away, because we're living in a world where I think that's going to become ubiquitous. Every bit of learning that we have is going to be digital in some form or another, and it's going to get really muddy as we continue to go through our times together and learning opportunities. How all the tools we use are going to make almost every kind of exchange at least enhanced by technology. So we've got to become really good consumers. We've got to become technologically adroit. We've got to be focused and ready to go. Guys, on my last time we were together, we won't do this again. I took you through a little bit of an exercise where I talked to you about finding your focus, finding your strength, and ultimately even taking good care of yourself physically, making sure that you have good posture. And that meditation exercise was an exercise where I gave you the suggestion of, when you go to bed at night, do not have your technology in your face. When you go to bed, try to give yourself a couple of hours of tech-free time before you fall asleep. Then when you wake up, I suggested don't grab your technology, give yourself a moment of rest, and then begin to reflect. All those suggestions are based on some of the best practices we know about how the brain works and how to improve our creative spirit. Now, Kevin, and if you're tied up or something and can't answer, that's perfectly fine. But Kevin heard me make that reference and that suggestion, and he took it to heart. And Kevin happens to have my cell phone number, which all of you are welcome to as well. But Kevin, you went through this process, and for those that might have joined you, what was it like? What did you learn? I know you did it for at least a little while. What did you learn, my friend?
I still do it every day. I will forget, I won't say every day, I will forget sometimes and grab my technology accidentally or turn on a TV maybe to get morning news before I have a moment of just sort of thinking about my day. But what I've learned is sometimes it was very random and sporadic. I mean, Casey can attend, I sent him some images, and sometimes it was just coffee. It's cold, today's Christmas. And other times it was a little more global, I guess. And I would stop and reflect on my goals for the year. And so those didn't happen often. Many times it was also blessings and things to be thankful for. Just whatever was the first thing that popped into my mind, I just quickly jotted it down. And I told Casey, we've heard of a morning jog, and this is what I call a morning jot. And so that's my morning jot now every morning instead of a morning jog. But anyway, around New Year's, it was a very extremely productive jot. And it really layered out for me several areas where I want to have some personal goals in this coming year, some academic goals and some spiritual goals and things like that, right? And so I was building that into it. But Casey's comment to me was, because he could see sort of my just random clutter and nonsense along the way until finally the one day it was highly productive. And he mentioned that it sometimes takes a while, I guess, for your brain to warm that muscle up, maybe, you know, and to get into that habit of saying, well, every morning he's going to make me have to sort of do a brain dump on all the processing that I did last night while he was sleeping. Right.
Yep. And guys, it will work. I mean, it's one of those things. And the reason I'm starting with that is because we kind of get into some techie stuff that's very important. And we get into talking about, you know, how these technology systems work. But at the end of the day, the reason, again, technology becomes so ubiquitous with our lives that, you know, if Kevin or any of us become so married to this device that we stop being creative, that we stop forgetting the most powerful tool is up here and in here in our hearts, then we're really missing out. And so that little tool, that little suggestion right there has, and with my bio, I've done quite a bit of coaching over the years, coaching principals, coaching other executives. And one of the coaching techniques that I work with is what he just described, where you wake up slowly, you give yourself that break, and then your brain literally puts out a report every morning. And it's really powerful, and it can really work. So I would encourage you to give it a try if you hadn't. That notion of writing things down, just a little bit of research I've read in the last month, and this just happened to be the latest piece of research I read. But if you get up in the morning and write down your intention for the day, I'm going to, write 5 pages of my dissertation. I'm going to reach out to 10 of my past clients if you were in business. Whatever, some kind of really focused intention that you have, that you're something like 2/3 more likely to execute the task and have that task stay front of mind if you write it down. So those are just really powerful little things, along with keeping your posture, which is important as well. So we covered all of that. Guys, really quickly, I want to jump in with, if you're not still so convinced that that technology is becoming ubiquitous, I'm going to tell you a really quick story. Refer to this again. The story of Amazing Mr. Hill. This is a teacher that really moved me, and part of the reason why I wrote this book. This guy was a very traditional teacher. He was an AP teacher, and he had generations of students that loved his class. But what happened was that he was not a technology guy. He did not like technology in any way. He would obviously use computers, and he would use email, but everything was grudgingly. He really believed that the human spirit and human interaction and his delivery was really the best thing. So he found out, though, a little bit later, that while he was working away, that some of his students were actually capturing his lectures on audio file. They didn't video him, but they captured him on audio file, and they shared it on a private channel. They also began having threaded conversations about what he was doing, about his lectures. They discussed and they shared notes. They studied and texted each other during class, and they'd ask each other for clarification vis-a-vis technology. They used Skype and virtual study groups when they got together. They used web resources, and they posted them. And so this was all going on without the quote unquote permission or even the knowledge initially of Mr. Hill. So what's interesting is when I hear people say at our school, we need to get busy and we want to, launch these online learning experiences. You may not know it, but guys, they may already be launched. And I would say in most cases, this is probably true. Almost every work environment, there are sub channels going on of people building virtual spaces to collaborate and connect and to learn and grow. So guys, this is not just a convenient alternative. As soon as you become a little bit more turned on to the opportunities with technology, you start getting creative about how we can do it. I mean, with this group right here, I'm going to guess that many of you right now will have a hard time getting away from using Zoom or Skype or Zoom or Teams, whatever you may be using for your meetings. I had a meeting the other day with someone I meet with quite regularly. I didn't need the Zoom technology, but now that's all we use. And when we talk, I almost wouldn't think of connecting with her any other way. So this becomes just not only the preferred modality, but the modality that you're used to, and it changes how you think. So the challenge, the purpose of our talk today is to talk a little bit how to create really engaging learning experiences. And so how do we really get learners engaged and to get sort of out of the clouds a little bit, necessary, but out of the clouds, and talk about some of the more just Monday morning ready technical stuff that you need to do. So one of the first things you can do that we believe is an important practice is learning how to launch your learning experiences. And when we say launch it could be the initial start of a class, or it could be the launch of a particular lesson. And to some degree, we're going to be positioning this from the start of the class, but you'll see some of these suggestions and these best practices revolve around both. And once again, for those of you that are listening to this and may not have been to previous discussions, just know that I, throughout various points in my career, I've had a chance to monitor and evaluate, in some cases, dozens and dozens of online instructors, and helping them to really learn to navigate these learning environments. So some of these suggestions are based on some of these best practices. So here are some things that we know work really well. When you're getting started with a digitized learning experience, posting an intro that is powerful, that is effective, that is engaging is a really great start. You know, they say there's never a second chance to make a first impression. And from a learning standpoint, I can tell you that it's true. And to get in initially and post those announcements early makes a huge difference to creating that engaging environment. Now, here's what's interesting. This is a little bit of probably, if you're old enough to remember Dale Carnegie, which is a really old reference, but still famous. But it's also true with what we know about some things that stimulate the brain. And that is, we want to make sure that we learn to use or consistently use the student's name once or more, the learner's name once or more. So if you're hosting a training experience or you're kicking off and you want it to be engaging, it sounds like a really simple thing to do. It was true when you went to kindergarten, and it's true on a digital learning environment today. But using people's names really gets their attention, and it actually helps them to be more involved. So use that name and use the names of those you work with more than once. This sounds like such a silly thing, but use exclamation points. Now you may say, Casey, you've got to be kidding me. You're really teaching us that? And the answer is yes. I'm going to guess most of you in this message, I'm going to say that most of you 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, didn't use many emojis when you sent a text message. And I'll bet today, I'm just guessing, that many of you or most of you at least use some. And why? Because in a digital learning space, you don't want to miss an opportunity to really share some matter of emotion or intention in a moment. So it's really, really important that you are aware of that. So what can you do? You can use someone's name. You can use exclamation marks. You know, in my distance learning spaces, I'll say, "Greetings, class!" Exclamation mark. "I hope everyone is well!" Exclamation mark. Why is that important? I want them to feel my enthusiasm, because if they're just reading a benign message, you know, there isn't as much of a chance to really get excited and engaged. And here's what we know about an engaged learning environment. A slow start is almost impossible to ever overcome. If they realize you come slowly slogging into a class and they don't sense that you either know them or care to know them, their level of engagement goes down significantly. Guys, it's true in any kind of work environment. If you study what modern human resource environments are trying to do, they know that the induction into that business could extend the life cycle of that employee. In some cases, you know, by months or years when you do it quantitatively and look at how it affected. So a really good induction can keep your folks fix their intention longer. So use exclamation marks and use people's names. These things work, believe it or not. And then share who you are in pictures or in words. So giving yourself away and letting people know who and what you are is really important. When Kevin logged in and we saw Kevin, we could see that he's a fastidious reader. You can see here that I've got more space than I know what to do with. You've got, I was observing an instructor's video recently, and a cat came marching by, and all the content was great, but there was a little bit of a reality to those moments. Now, obviously, I say with a smiling bit of caution, you've got to be careful that there's not too much reality. I was sadly part of a team that had to wind up letting a colleague go, because I'll just say that what they were allowing the camera to observe would not be stuff that you want your students to observe. So you've got to have that in mind as well. But the idea that you can bring people in, the idea that those I work with now, whether if I'm teaching or if I'm coaching, and I can say, "Come in, have a seat, be here with me, we're here together." It's a more intimate experience than this old corporate notion of we're in this sort of stage place. So don't be afraid to share yourself. By all means, consider creating a video. It's a really powerful thing. A video creates warmth and energy, and they can hear your voice, you can see your dynamism. And please, when you do it, smile. Use it as an opportunity to make connections. Ideally, in a perfect world, if you know something about the learners, you can talk about them. They love it when you talk about them. The best person to talk about in a video isn't yourself, it's them. They're more interested in themselves than they are you. And I say that with a smile, but making it about them is a powerful thing. So if you know something about them or their experiences, or you're just reaching out, telling them about their experience, they love that. Okay. You can also, in that introduction set of experiences, introduce outside resources and links, things that they can click through. Now, guys, just look at that. This is a really, you're going to say, Casey, this is a pretty basic list. It's basic, but it's stuff that we don't do. And again, in a digital learning environment, some of these things can't necessarily be overcome. So for example, I like to think I was a pretty good face-to-face teacher. I had students who I've stayed in touch with to this day. I love the experience working face-to-face. And when I look at that list, did I always have my announcements carefully planned? Well, sure, I had a syllabi, but I was able to rely on a lot of engaging activities and welcoming them and connecting with them. I was able to build that classroom climate and that induction with my heart and with my language and with my ability to emotionally connect with my students. It's a little harder at a distance. And so what we're suggesting is some of these things have to be a little more predictable. So these are some suggestions that we actually say we recommend that organizations that want to do what in their heart they might have normally done, sometimes you have to take an extra step. In other words, like mandating, for lack of a better word, that you use names, exclamation marks, and call people by name directly. I'm working with an organization that's trying to turn their culture around right now, and it's their plan to make sure that digitally and face-to-face, that every learner in that organization will get at least 5 acknowledgments a day of who they are. It may not be, good acknowledgments. We're assuming most of them will be positive. And actually, if it was a negative reaction, we wouldn't even count that. We want 5 either recognitions or affirmations. They don't all have to be this way, but at least 5 a day. Completely changes in systems where we've done that in the past. It completely changes the level of engagement. When I show up into an online learning environment, and I know that even if I post something that isn't genius, at least I'll get some acknowledgement. Someone's going to say something. Many of you might have posted something in a learning space or even a social space and thought, nobody responded to my post. We all want that interaction. So anyway, if you just did those 3 things, you could be really, really good. Be careful when posting outside links, because remember, the outside is coming in. There's never been a time when we have more access than we do today. And I've bragged on this moment for us as being the most incredible moment ever, because we've got so much access that we didn't have before. However, we also have the ability to let the world in on us, which is problematic. When we can let the world in, they can come in on us, obviously. So that can be problematic. But we also need to obviously celebrate the fact that the outside world is coming in, that we have the opportunity to invite the outside world. So celebrate, and also just be cautious of it, because obviously we have both good and bad things can emerge. So what else do we want to do? We want to encourage discovery and avoid the habit of over explaining. So what do I mean by that? Look at this diagram right here. All right. Now, how many of you, and you don't have to answer aloud, but how many of you, as you look at this, would know what to do if you had to put that diagram together? Do you feel like if you had to put this that diagram together, do you think that you could get that done in a reasonable amount of time? So I'm looking at the chat function. It looks like I see a Lord no. And actually, they're all working. Their chat box is working privately, but looks like a few. I see one yes. But look, that looks less daunting to me than a whole myriad of directions. But the point is that the only way to probably do that would be to, I would look at that picture and then experiment a little bit. Experimentation is really where it's at. Working with a another entity right now, and they're implementing a Canvas-based product. And they've asked me, well, how much training do we need for a Canvas-based product? And Canvas would tell you, we don't give much training because we believe in the value of discovery. Line by line by line exploration can become overwhelming because people feel like they have to quote unquote get it right. Learning at a distance and really creating those most engaging environments involve discovery, figuring it out. It's like your phone. How many times have you used your phone and then looked over and somebody's doing something that, well, once you knew that, you did it and you never let go. It's like that with, with discovery-based learning, and it works really well at a distance. So I think that would be an IKEA, I believe, experience there. Set time released items. So avoid over explaining, but then set time released items. What do I mean by that? That means that what we encourage you to do is whenever possible, post your announcements and then have them set to roll out ahead of time. It's not mandatory, but what's nice about that is, and I've encouraged instructors, is sometimes you can get a little too extemporaneous. But if you can sit down and like, there's some courses that I have taught year after year, and I know them pretty well. And I understand, boy, but when we do this assignment, they always ask about this particular rule of APA, or they always want to know about this particular reference. So they're always, this reading is pretty good, but I'm going to direct them to this, this, and this. And so when you know kind of what's coming when you launch your learning experiences, it puts you in a far better situation. So what I'm going to suggest to you here is that setting time released items is really valuable. I have a whole catalog of items that I set on time release that are designed to motivate, inspire, engage. If they're course specific, they might illuminate and extend the learning, but they're all designed to keep people engaged. I have learners all around that say, oh, wow, I took that class and I really liked that story you told on X. Well, what's cool today is you can capture that story in a digital post, and you can it could be on video, it could be however it's going to be, and it could continue to exist for you. It's really, really cool that way. So set those time release announcements and be ready, and just make sure that you're timely. Make sure that your time release announcements are age appropriate. Obviously, and context appropriate. Make sure that you're not becoming too casual in your presentation, but also maybe not being too stifled either. Having the ability to have a sense of humor. Always announce what's most important. I've had a tendency in my enthusiasm to connect to probably post too much, because some learners are like, just give me what you need and I don't need all the motivation. Okay, well, we'll be doing a little bit of that. So there's going to be motivation, and there's going to be the tactical stuff, but just be cognizant of that. Again, allowing for discovery for the rest is really important. If nobody can find a resource, then that's a problem. But invariably, I've logged in and I'll see, oh my goodness, they can't find this. And then I look, well, someone found it and someone else posted it, and all of a sudden problem solved, and they didn't need me. That's ideal. What you want to do is create a learning space where we're all helping each other. I've actually looked on course shells, and we can't find a particular resource, and a learner says, I found it, it's over here, and we all find it simultaneously. So those things do happen, and to create again a really authentic and rich learning environment, allow for that beautiful moment of discovery. Make a connection. The next thing we encourage to make your learning environment really rich is to make a personal connection with every student in the learning space. For probably 7 years, I have connected on a personal level. When I say that, I'm talking about actually making a one-on-one personal connection where I can tell you 15 seconds worth of stuff about that learner. I can tell you maybe where they're from, what job they just came from, maybe even a hint of their aspirations, why they're in the class. All those things can be discovered. So when you have that one-on-one connection, it's so powerful. And what's the biggest change? Two changes. One, it makes it easier for you because you wind up, grading them and observing them differently. But the idea that you could make that connection and then they feel differently because they feel like they are known. If you want to know the number one contributing factor to keep people from dropping out of any kind of academic program, advanced or frankly, the most rudimentary of training skills, it's feeling connected and engaged with the institution and the instructor. If they feel engaged, cared about, and they feel that they're not just a number, they don't want to let the person down. I was working with an administrator in a school that prepared tomorrow's plumbers. And you talk about a necessary entity these days. He did plumbing, he did solar, and he worked on heating and air, and really important stuff, preparing the next generation of plumbers and heating and air folks. And, they would stay in that school because they felt so connected to the founder, to the learners. They just didn't want to let them down. They wanted to be a graduate. They wanted to show they can go off and do good things because they made that personal connection. Do that every time you have a chance in a digital space, and it changes the environment. Guys, if you think that you can't make a significant connection at a distance with another human being, I'll ask you this, yes or no, and you're welcome to respond to me privately. Are your relationships with some of your best friends better today because they can send a text message anytime they want, or has that made it worse? Better or worse, the fact that you have text messages today that your friends can simply connect with you. Okay, gotten a couple answers so far, and everyone says it's better. And so I've got some of my dearest friends that I left thousands of miles behind when I moved to Phoenix, and I know that I communicate more with them today because we have digital exchanges ongoingly, never ends. So making that personal connection is really, really powerful. So you need to model also when you launch that learning experience and make that connection. You need to model what you want. You need to be friendly. You need to be specific. You need to be engaging every time you connect with your learners. Think about, what energy do you want to bring? And you may say it's just an announcement. I'm just typing them. Please post it on please post that on the discussion board. Well, hey, Michael, thanks for asking. What you can take that PDF and post it on the discussion board. I'll be happy to find that in the next day or so and give you some feedback. I hope you're doing well. That little bit of difference makes all the difference in making them feel engaged. Now you may say, Case, where's the tactics here in terms of creating a learning an environment where they learn more and are more engaged? Guys, this is it. These are the tools. If I were that inviting to you, and this is in this training experience, you're gonna feel more engaged and more likely to participate. If I'm just sort of post here and you're a number to me and I don't know who you are, it doesn't work as well. So this is those are really, really important items. And again, be a good host for referencing other students and facilitating early friendships. So if I were here and I saw that Brooke posted something amazing about her pet Mastiff, and I would say, Jessica, I read here that you have an Italian Mastiff and Brooke has an English Mastiff. Did you guys, and I'm just teasing, I don't know about your habits of pets. Those are really huge dogs. But if I were throwing out those two things to you two, that would give you an excuse to talk to each other. Guys, think of it like being a good host to a party. If you had a bunch of people coming to your party that you knew all of them and you wanted them to know each other, you might walk up and say, hey, John, have you met Elizabeth? Hey, Elizabeth, have you met Gina? And here's what you two might have in common. Be a good host and bring people together. Here's the thing, guys. You may sound like this sounds like a lot of work. It is, but it's all up front. If you do this up front, the rest of it's a piece of cake. The rest of they've already started the conversation. I actually have hosted some courses, and I can think of some recently. You blow it up at the beginning like that, and guess what? The rest of it, you're encouraging them to communicate, and you wind up being another one of the facilitators, another one of the people there who are deeply engaged with the process. I hope that makes sense. So being really specific is helpful. I gave an example here about a dog, kind of what the same thing is. Hey, you may want to check out your friend Kaylee. She has a dog too. How cool. Have a great day. So having those personal opportunities is really important. Now that's in a public space, in a public, like a discussion board space. We also recommend that you reach out privately and connect with every student. One of the protocols I have is I reach out in certain timeframes, depending on the course I'm teaching and the timeline, or if it's a training, and I reach out and I'll just say, hey, not for nothing. It isn't like every Wednesday at a certain time, just sort of a not for nothing, but I'm reaching out to say hi. And have you never heard the phrase not for nothing? It's like, I don't want anything. I'm just checking in, but not for nothing. I'm checking in to see you. And is there anything going on we need to chat about? Are you finding everything okay? Do you need any additional support? And sometimes in doing that, they wind up asking for support. I had a conversation recently with a learner who said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I wanted a quick question. Honestly, their question could have been answered like this in an email. But what was cool, we had a 3-minute conversation, and we're on a completely different wavelength because she's been communicated with. She feels really good. I know she likes the university. So those are just little steps that you can take that can make a really, really big difference. And so I have a sample here, and I'd be happy to, if anybody ever wanted this, we certainly could do it. But this is an example of a welcome. I hope the first couple of days have been great. I know it's a lot of information at once. You remember, you can ask me questions. Or did you find everything okay? I'm here to support you. Having that at the very beginning is great. I suggest following up again depending on the length of this course, but following up later and just saying, how is everything going? So by doing that, you wind up opening an artery of communication that I hope, for your sake, never goes away. You're also creating an icebreaker entry ticket. At the beginning here and every day is really powerful. It creates evidence and rigor when you come in. Guys, there's nothing more powerful than in any learning environment that when a learner comes through the door, the learning starts. Take a tab, grab a piece of paper, write your name, do this, get them busy, and something that's going to give them some feedback and engagement. Some of the best instructors I know, I'm actually helping a school put together an introductory assessment program based on this recommendation, where they come in and they immediately have that icebreaker, but not just to say hello and to get them thinking and to get their brain warmed up, but it's a mental transition that simultaneously gives the instructor some very valuable information about two really important questions. What does the student know? And what are they ready to learn? Two very important questions. What do they know, and what are they ready to learn? And that icebreaker activity is so powerful when they connect. And so it also gives you yet another forced, quote unquote, opportunity to communicate and to get to know each other. And it ultimately creates a safe space for students to also report conversations and connections that are inappropriate or uncomfortable. So by making that happen, I've had learners come to me and say, hey, my coworker instant messaged me and said something that I found really creepy. Should I be offended by this? And so we can have a conversation about it, and I can appropriately support them. So by having that dialogue, you give yourself an avenue for that. We also recommend that in your learning spaces that you create a post or a place for questions. So if you have a question, class, this is where you'll post it, and it gives them a chance to say, I don't know what to do, and they go to that space. Now remember, that can be a space where not only you answer it, but your colleagues. I've told you that in classes that I've done this with, where there are multiple students, if you do this, by the time you get there, someone else has already seen it. It's amazing. You can be in 3 times a day. Someone's going to beat you. Okay. So it's really, really cool and powerful that they can get in there and do that. So, and then always, always, always consider the student's view. If you have the ability to set your course up so that you can actually see their view, it's so powerful. You can say, what are they seeing? How does it feel? What does it make them think about? How are they going to connect? It really, really does can have a significant impact. So consider that student's view. If you have the ability to do that, then do that. So as you think about what I've shared with you here, right now, based on what I've shared with you, I hope that you would have an opportunity to think about at least the launch of your learning experiences differently. And Brooke, you asked a question about how would one implement this in a D2. I'm not sure I'm going to read this, icebreaker, that is. And you know what we're gonna do, Brooke? I'm gonna have let's actually have a back and forth dialogue about this with mics open. In about 10 minutes, we're gonna have a dialogue. So if you don't mind, we'll come back to that, and I'd love that because I'd love everybody to hear that as well. And I want, if I don't get some clarifying questions, I'm worried I'm gonna answer it incorrectly. So let's jump ahead here to one of the. I want to cover one more thing, and we have a kind of a short time together. But I also given you some stuff that they're very technical, tactical things that really do help you in kicking off your learning experiences, and it really helps make the launch of your class really helpful. Let me share with you here 10 additional keys. These are sort of our holy grail keys to creating really engaging learning in a distance learning space. So let me start with it. So you want to start start with a rigorous, inviting learning environment. So if you want to create engaging lessons, your learning environment has to be engaging. Think of it this way. If you were going to see a personal trainer and you wanted to get in shape and work harder than you've been working in the past, showing up in a place with soft music playing, it's dark, the coach or the trainer has a monotone voice, that's not a rigorous and inviting learning environment. So your learning environment has to be rigorous, inviting. And by the way, rigor is a really important thing for you to remember. There is zero evidence that reducing rigor enhances engagement and learning and growth. There's zero evidence of that. It's always about enhancing the rigor. Start with strong student-to-student teacher connections. That always makes a really big difference. Make those connections, as we've talked about. The research on this is really clear. A learner will not drop out of a program. That's a doctorate program or an introductory to typing skills program for some business certification. Not putting that down in any way. I'm just saying any kind of program. If they feel they have a connection to another student or another teacher, it's so simple. The environments, the learning institutions that isolate learners and have instructors that are very authoritarian and distant have the highest dropout rate and have the poorest retention. Just the converse, it's always better. It should be the same for your learning environment in your class. You want to make sure that you relate your learning experiences to real life. This is a pretty basic thing, but how do we learn things? We learn things based on what's relevant to us. So for example, if you wanted to explain the concept of a lion to someone that had never seen, a kid that had never seen a lion, they might have a house cat, and you show them the house cat, and you say, now a bigger version of this house cat is at the zoo, and it's called a lion. That's a related, connected learning experience. And that sounds like a really basic thing, but that's fundamentally how we learn. If you're from a part of the world where you don't have house cats, but you do have lions, and you know what a lion is, and they introduce to a house cat, think how different that introduction would be. Let's just say you had no context. You'd say, why in the world do you have a cat in your house if your first experience was with a lion? And it sounds like, and that flip can actually exist, but and probably not a whole lot, but it can exist. And the reason I share it with you though is the context of bringing the real life experience to the learning can make a really, really big difference. So we always want to relate it to real life and want to relate it whenever possible to the student. Why do I differentiate those two? Because in some cases, a student's real life isn't very interesting or helpful or useful. And I said that to kind of pin your ears back a little bit because it sounds insulting. I don't mean it to be. One of the challenges can be is, let's just say the learner is from an environment, and let's just say it depends on where you're working with them, but they're from an environment where there's a low amount of technology, low amount of diversity, low amount of experience, low amount of growth opportunities. And it's just a very, very, an environment that's not very competitive, and it's fairly isolated. Do we want to keep all of that learning revolving around their context? We can start there, right? But we don't want to keep it there. So we want to connect it with real life. You know, one of the problems we've had with public school education is we've had this focus on local control, which was fine when everyone stayed local. and there was a low amount of technology, and everyone went from school to the farm and school to the farm, generation after generation. Today, they go from the Great Plains to having to compete with kids in India and China for highest level technology jobs that have obviously ever existed. So we have to connect real world with real live communities, and it isn't a matter of choosing one or the other. It's both. So you do need to make it about the local context, about the life of those you serve, wherever they're from. But you also have to make it about the real life that is around them. And those are interesting questions that you have to find yourself asking no matter where you are. Get involved, get interacting, stay busy. Today even at a distance, we can do that so much better than we ever could before. I've done a version of this lecture to 2,000 people where all we have is the chat box, and the chat box blows up when we do it right. And we have all kinds of dialogue, and we learn about each other as we go. Get them involved, create games, have fun, use questions and discovery. Don't be afraid to get the students up and moving, get their blood pumping, get them asking questions. Getting in oxygen is a really powerful thing. Guys, getting students working in groups is incredibly powerful. Getting them in groups is so important. By getting them involved with groups, they have a chance to learn what it's like to work in a group, learn from each other, create far greater degree of engagement. And the last one I'll give you is give students choices whenever possible. Give them the opportunity to choose one avenue or another. I had a student just recently, a graduate student, who was so perplexed by the choices that we gave her, because, and I could tell, and I teased her about this, and wonderful student and just enjoying working with her, but she's so committed to doing the right thing. And then when I gave her some choices, well, you could apply it to this, you could try that. We just want you to demonstrate your learning. It was a mind blower, because she suddenly had choice, but that was just the mind blowing moment that she needed to expand her understanding and really grow. So groups, choices, get up and move, ask questions, play games, interact, connect with the students' real life, and connect with the real life of the world around you. All right. Build those strong connections, and whatever you develop, make it rigorous, make it inviting, and make it relevant to the learning that you're ultimately after. So guys, these are just some really basic key things, along with the suggestions I made for how you can introduce the lesson, that I hope are really helpful. I deliberately went through this, and Kevin reminded me last time, I want to teaching right up to the top of the hour. I'm not going to do that this time, because I think some of the most valuable things can come from our discussion. And we've got a nice workable group here where we can turn on everybody's mic. So I think if I'm steering, I can unmute everybody.
Yeah, and Brooke had a question too.
I saw that. So
do you need any more control? Because I want to test something, because I have no idea why people still are only able to private message, unless because I'm the organizer of the meeting. Once I relinquish control to you and make you host, it may make the conversation private, so you don't have access to my previous conversations once I give you host. I don't know. We're going to see here in a second. So relinquish your power, and then we'll see if people can all go into the chat.
I will relinquish my power. Hold on, my friend. But
Brooke, beat you, man.
Yes, sir. And Brooke, I think you may be unmuted, and so I can do two things at once. While I relinquish power, if you have a question, I can try to answer it.
Oh yeah. So I was thinking about the icebreaker that you talked about, which I can completely imagine in an on-ground classroom. I'm trying to consider how I can apply that either in a discussion board, a news post, or an email. Something. I think the place where I get caught up is I think I'm really good at connecting with the students personally. I think I'm having a harder time getting the students to connect with one another and within the context of the classroom.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this. What's your evidence of that? Because I think I know what's probably going on, but what's your evidence that they're not as willing to do that?
Um, more of they get in, they do the basic requirements and they get out. So like if I set up a virtual classroom session, I have, about 4 who really want to attend and they come, and I make it optional because I know lives are crazy and I don't want to create undue pressure. Uh, and then I have those so I send out a personal email to every single student, which is more devoid of academics and more just about me and please tell me about you. And I get responses from about half of the students. I guess I can see how many people read my posts. I can see how many people read different parts. I do a survey to find out what they want to know about, like in the intro video, so that I can address everybody's sort of
Sure.
worries at the beginning. And I'm just trying to figure out how to draw the rest of them in.
So, okay, I want you, that diagnosis is perfect. So here's what we've seen. A couple things can be happening, guys. And if you can, and right now, I think Kevin has successfully turned on the all chat box. And if you guys want to speak up and unmute yourself, you can. I think, Kevin, you can unmute all their microphones, or I think they have the power to do that. But if you've never experienced this, it can happen. And there's a couple things that we've diagnosed over time. There are times when participants are just nervous. They're nervous about participating. So not unlike learners at any level, you've got to make it inviting for them. And you start with by making it easy. Having those introductory posts where you tell about yourself. The reason that's so helpful is that they're an expert in themselves and they can easily share who they are. So that's what makes that introduction so good. Everyone wins. You post by doing that. Another problem can happen as you get into the discussions is that sometimes, especially if you're, I'm not shy in my course rooms. I'll post videos. People see that I'm enthusiastic, that I'm direct. I use people by name, and they can see, well, he may have really high expectations. I'm afraid. That can sometimes, you might have with goodwill and intention have intimidated somebody, and especially if somebody's coming in with a little bit of that. Then if they happen to, and sometimes this is a compliment, but they may think, wow, this person's a pretty smart person. They've accomplished a lot. If I post something, it's going to sound dumb. And they may be afraid to post or don't want to post too much because they don't want to sound that way. And guys, here's the other thing that can happen is that in those collective learning experiences, they can also start to feel like the only person they're posting for is you. Let me explain that. There may be 10 people in the class, 20 people in the class, and whose one post they want to wait for, it's yours. I used to have this, if I had 25 people in a class, I used to say I was only going to respond to maybe 7 or 8. And the reason I did that was because I didn't want everyone to feel like they were waiting for my response. Now, I've since changed that. And what I do is I set really distinct boundaries for when things need to be posted so that everybody posts. So if I'll say a post is due on Friday, a response is due by Monday, and all responses have to be in by Monday. By Saturday, I'll start to engage. But they still need to respond to one another. And I may go 1 or 2 posts, but by the end, I respond to everybody because I like every original post to have at least my response, but I don't want to be the first in. Sometimes what you can do is, and I've with all good intention and enthusiasm made this mistake, respond to everybody first. And then everybody's either, well, I'm going to disagree with Dr. Reason, which I would welcome. That'd be fine. But they would do that. So guys, and this is collectively to Brooke too, but all of you, I hope that kind of makes some sense. Brooke, is that helpful?
It is, because when I synced it to my introduction email, Like my whole point is to make a personal connection, but I also want them to know that I'm qualified to teach the class. And I think I put too much information about my history of what I've done professionally.
Right.
And that might be the piece that I need to take out
Right.
to
Well, I
take
don't
it.
know that that's, I think that having information about you professionally, that they know something about you, is amazing. And I wouldn't in any way sort of try to lessen your academic influence. But here's what I would do. Don't just be conscious. Think about yourself if you went to a party. And let's
Uh-huh.
just say you had a lot to offer. Let's say the party and it was revolving around people that were learning about something that you were already an expert in. You might do more of the talking because of your expertise. You
Uh-huh.
wouldn't want to dominate every bit of oxygen in there because that's not
No.
fun. So think of it like, I would encourage you to think of it like with just good social cues about what you would do and what you would want done to you in a good social learning environment. Does that help?
Yeah, that totally helps. Thank you.
All right, Brooke. I really appreciate your attendance last few times. And who else, guys, or participants? Anybody else here would like to ask a question live and in real time?
Casey, I have a question. It's not really a question. It's just really an observation that we don't typically gravitate towards whenever we're teaching online. And that is number 8. And that is get students up and moving. And we think, well, they're online students. How can you do that? You can do that easily in a classroom, right? Well, you had us do it last time, like you just mentioned in the beginning. So you could, just, hey, class, just, making sure that everybody's doing okay and practicing healthy, stress measures here. Let me do a yoga or whatever. I mean, get up and stand, sit, breathe, and you have them go through a 2 or 3 minute physical activity that
Right.
you be modeling in your video as a faculty member, making you look more real too by doing that stuff.
Well, I won't pull it out here, but in my hand here, Kevin, I've got an Oculus 2, and these are these instruments. Have you used one of these, Kevin? Anybody else use one of these?
Yeah. Video
This is going to really change how we do a lot of things at a distance, because what this could literally do would be, let's say that we were having a training experience together and we all had these on. We all could go to a virtual world together and we could our movements, what we were doing, let's say we were exercising together, and let's say Kevin were leading us in a Taekwondo class. We could, in the Oculus, go right with him and have that shared experience. So the idea that we're static at a distance is all going away. So Kevin, that's your next homework. We're going to get you this Oculus. This has a boxing program, and I'm just telling you, and Kevin will tell you, I'm a big guy. I face somebody that makes me look tiny, and with my Oculus punching bags on, I had to move a lot to stay out of the digital way there, but I made it through. I got out of it okay, but I hope that's helpful.
I used to play Wii boxing, but the computer always beat me up. I'm no good at that stuff, Casey.
Me neither.
Like Elizabeth is like in Iceland or something over there. What's going on?
Any other questions, guys? Any other questions or comments or suggestions or inquiries?
I actually have another quick question.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Okay. Do you think that it is an error mindset to believe that online students are taking online classes to get in the class, get it done, and be gone?
Well, there are people that have made the calculation that the simplest and easiest thing for me to do is to take it online, so I'm not getting hassled by the instructor, and it's the easiest way possible. But I would tell you that looking for the easy way out is an entirely human characteristic. If we're gathering food, we're going to look for the easiest way to get food. If we want to get fit, what's the easiest way to get fit? If we're going to get rich, what's the easiest way to get rich? So we're always looking for that. And I would just tell you that I really think that's changed. Ask a young person how they prefer to learn. My sons are freshmen at ASU. They have not been on campus yet. And they're taking some of the hardest classes they offer for freshmen. I don't think I know it isn't as good as being there, but they're not as convinced as I am that's true. I know it's true, but they're just not as convinced as I am yet. And so it's not entirely, it's not entirely, or obviously it's not entirely true that that's why people would do it. It does exist. But I would say is, Brooke, don't let it worry you, because we're all looking for the most efficient way forward, right?
Right.
Elizabeth, do you have a question? Yeah, I hope make sure you're unmuted too.
Okay, yeah, so I try to use like my initial, you talked about posting early versus posting late. So if I post early, I try to use it like a lecture, and I try to post regarding content that
Yep.
they need to know. But then part of the problem that I'm seeing is that students aren't going deeper. They're just doing this real surface type of stuff instead of like trying to look at the material from different lenses to add more substantial content to their responses.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, that's a very common thing. And I like one of the things and this is sort of I'm going to give you a really very real answer. If you're in a class of working adults, sometimes you're going to, and in my experience, I have come to the realization that, working people sometimes have working decisions to make. And I've sort of just acknowledged it. Elizabeth, I've sort of said, you know what, if you need to get the gentle person's A and just sort of do what you need to do. I mean, I won't let it be nonsense, but I understand. And in some ways that inspires them to do more, because they'll say the gentle person's A is, if that's all you could, I mean, who am I to judge if somebody has taken care of an elderly parent and just doing the very best they can to keep their head above water? It will change. And I always tell them they're in charge of the learning experiences they have. I mean, I've had to work my tail off at certain points in my life, and it wasn't what I gave, it's what I got from that. And if your learners aren't doing that, there's only so much that you can make them see and make them do. So when I've positioned it that way, it's less stressful for me, because if a learner's doing their gentlewomanly A and they're doing the work, but they aren't sweating profusely on the way, I've sort of assumed that's what they were. And by presenting it that way, I have some saying, well, I want my life to be amazing. I want these great results. Because then you get in the conversation, I want these amazing results, but I don't want to work very hard. Then you can say, well, this might be a good time to push a little harder. I don't know if that helps.
Well, my concern is with, in our program, I'm doing the BSN pre-licensure program. And so we're doing the hybrid learning where some of the content is through a didactic strictly online. Some of it's in lab where we're reinforcing some of the concepts and skills. However, again, I mean, not to be, snarky, but you're like, well, I can read what the textbook has to say. They're just really just like doing very surface responses. There's really no deep diving. And in nursing curriculum, we're moving to concept-based curriculum because their NCLEX now is going to have, instead of your standard 4 multiple choice questions or select all that apply, they're now going to have to do a more conceptual, because they're going to have kind of unfolding questions where they'll be given content like labs, a brief history, right, and then maybe assessment component, and then they have to conceptually answer those questions. So how do we get them to or persuade them or guide them into really digging deeper into that material?
So,
Can I add a little bit here too, Casey? And Elizabeth, this is a very good question. Part of the answer, in my opinion, is if they're only responding basic, then it may be the way the curriculum is structured. If it's just asking them to repeat back and summarize, and we're only asking them DQ questions that can be answered with the same typical answer of everybody, then there's not much variation beyond that. If they're open-ended questions, and I know in nursing, you don't ask many open-ended questions, right? You want to know that they can do the skills that are necessary to be successful, there's always a right answer. You don't get to sort of wing it in nursing. You got to follow protocol and do what has been established as the right answer. In other professions, you can kind of wing it. And so I believe in y'all's profession, because there's only a right answer. Sometimes the right answer is all you're going to get, because we don't care about their opinion. You know what I mean? I don't care if you think this is the right procedure or not. We know this procedure works. Do it. Is basically going to have to be, it's life and death. In education and businesses and so forth, people don't necessarily die. So maybe because of the restrictedness of your discipline and the type of knowledge and skills and attitudes sort of that people have to accumulate along the way. By the way, I'm sorry, my camera's off. It's silly to be talking to people without them being able to see you. But you get my point. The nature of your discipline may structure them to say there's only one right answer. And you have to hit a performance to progress and move on. And so they can obsess sometimes on that and then forget the learning that takes place. It's too many. I'm focusing on the answer, but I don't understand how the answer fits into the big picture of everything. I just kind of want to stop. This has been really good. I know we have an extra 15 minutes always for this, but I also know people will be cutting off before long. And I really wanted to summarize a little bit of where Casey has brought us, and then give Casey an opportunity to talk about his fourth. She's got the book already. The fourth, and by the way, Casey, all of these books back here, I know one of those has one of your leadership books that you gave me in there. So, and that's just wallpaper. That's not really books, by the way. That's just an optical illusion. Anyway, again, please, if you've attended this and you want, some professional development certificate of attendance, please let me know. And a couple of things really jumped out at me, and Casey made this point clearly, and it is true. And if you think about everything he talked about, it sort of is the enthusiasm of the instructor can be very contagious about getting that education, that student involved in that education to avoid a lot of things. And his comment was, a slow start is hard to rebound from. And so if you're not in there day one and week one, and you're not actively engaged, you're not setting that pace, and you're not excited, and you're not getting people, passionate about what you're talking about. And it's just like, okay, well, this doesn't seem like, this person, my instructor's not even showing up. They don't even care. Then you have now set the pace to be this just minimal, just get by, just do whatever's required, because the instructor doesn't even care. I always get 10 out of 10s, right? So part of your answer there too, Elizabeth, is if they're only doing the minimum, they shouldn't be getting A's.
Right.
No, if you're only hitting the minimum, that's like a C. They should be scoring C's all the way down that rubric. And then they'll lift their answer a little better next time, I would think. But anyway, the other key variable that jumped out repeatedly through Casey's and all of our and all of his tips, by the way, that he talked about today, every single one of those went back to a common variable: personalization. Personalization. Every single one of those tricks he talked about was creating a student and faculty connection back to the real world and et cetera, right? But it was personalization. If they log into a class and it just feels stale, like everybody else's class, there's nothing that makes me know who that instructor is and feels like who they are, and I can relate and connect. He just told you relating and connecting to a faculty member is the #1 variable for success. So how are you connecting with your students? And he gave a whole range of ways for you to do it. You just have to be creative, and think of ways to make that a connection. So Casey, thank you again for your expertise in this area. Will you give us a little tease about what the last and final part of this?
We're going to talk about assessment and reinforcement. All right, Elizabeth, thank you. We're going to talk about assessment and reinforcing learning. And we're going to talk about how you can assess for progress and then ultimately provide intervention. It's not enough to just teach this stuff. It's not enough to just say, Jessica is struggling with this or doing great with this. We want to intervene and give, more extra support or support where it's needed to catch up. So that's what we're going to. How do we do that at a distance? We're going to do that next time through.
Thank you, Casey. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for your attendance.
Thanks for showing up. Have you guys have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
No problem.